This is Bill Zoller with the Wellness Warriors Ministry, and today we're going to be talking about longevity and the longest lived people in the world. We'll take a look at what we can learn from these very interesting people groups. As part of the big picture, let us consider what's going on in the Western world and particularly in the United States of America. We have rampant chronic diseases in our country, including cancer, heart disease, lung disease, stroke, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and on and on. To support all of this disease, we have a huge burgeoning medical system. And it's interesting to me, at least, that we have more health information than ever before. And I would want to add to that point that much of what we find on the internet and in the popular media is unfortunately biased information, blatantly inaccurate information. And I say that just to caution people to be circumspect in what you take in and what you believe and what you put to use in your life. Other issues in the big picture is that it would seem that we all seek to live a long life. But the issue would really be, do we live a long time with disease and on 4 or 5 or 10 medications for the rest of our life? Or are we living a long time without disease, living to be 80 or 90 or 100 years old without significant chronic diseases? What we seek to do is to increase what we call our quality life years, and that is the number of years that we live without physical and psychological illness, without dementia, without heart disease or cancer. The antediluvians might be a new concept for some of you, but these are people who lived before the flood, as it is described in the book of Genesis in the Holy Bible. They lived much longer than we do today, typically over 700 years, and were vegetarians. Now, we have several terms here as we talk about longevity. We talk about blue zones, and these are geographic areas in the world where people just tend to live a long time. These folks are living to be 90 to 125 years old. Another concept is cold spots, and these refer to areas of the world, geographic areas where people simply don't have certain chronic diseases, where people, for example, just don't get cancer, where people just don't become depressed, where people are slim and trim and don't become overweight. A third concept is what we call centenarians, and these are people who are living to be over 100 years old. And supercentenarians are people who are living to be in excess of 110 years old. So here is a very interesting idea, one that I absolutely believe in, and that is that having chronic disease is not a normal or inevitable part of the aging process. And if all of us will just pause a moment and think about all of these people who we know, most of us know a handful of people who are up in years, who are over 90, who are perhaps over 100 years old, and where the brain is still functioning well, and where people can still walk around and be relatively independent. And so we do not believe that it's that it is inevitable to become ill and dependent on medications as we age. So next we're going to look at who are these people groups in the world who are living a long time. Well, one of these groups is in Crete, and another is in Akkaria, a Greek island, and the Papua New Guinea Highlanders and the Kitavans, also in New Guinea, are among those who are living a long time without disease. Also, the Seventh-day Adventists, the only group in America who fits into this category of the longest lived. Let me talk just a little bit about the Seventh-day Adventists. Many of them live in Loma Linda, California. They have been studied exhaustively in two huge research studies. They've been studied over a period of several, if not many, decades. And they provide their parishioners some guidelines about healthy living, including exercise ideas and ideas about the optimal way to eat in order to live a long time. And I want to mention that not more than 50% of these people are compliant with these nutritional guidelines. And among those, we could call these people that 50% vegetarians. And then not more than perhaps 6 to 8% of the Seventh-day Adventists are vegans, that is to say, people who do not eat any animal foods. And so very interesting, the Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, as we go along, the Kuna Indians who live on an island near Panama are also some of the longest lived people. The Hunzas from northernmost Pakistan. Often these people live a long, long time without getting sick. The Abkhasians in Caucasus Mountains in southern Russia, the Vilcabamba people in southern Ecuador, the Okinawans, who many people have heard about. Here's a picture of a Vilcabamba man. Unfortunately, not very good resolution here. Here is an Abkhazian man. Here is an elderly gentleman from Okinawa. Also, the Ugandans and the traditional Chinese are among the groups living a long time without disease. Here is a rural Chinese lady. Now let's look at some of the characteristics of these people who tend to live a long time. I'll want to emphasize this is not an exhaustive list, but it certainly is some of the main characteristics and behaviors of these people. Again, these folks are living to be 95 to 125 years old. And interestingly, they do not overeat. They do not stuff themselves. If you're like me and you go to some of the restaurants and buffets in town, there are many, many people who just eat too much food. These people tend to be primarily plant-based eaters. They also eat a lot of variety in their daily diet. And they tendency-wise tend to avoid leftover food. Some of them actually consider leftover food to be poisonous. And they tend to eat slower. They aren't like me and gobbling their food. They tend to take their time when they eat, to not be in a hurry. But then many of these people groups just tend not to be in a big hurry in their life in general. These folks eat an assortment of small dishes, and these small dishes of food are called different things in different countries. In Crete, they're called mesas. In Okinawa, okazu, and in Spain, tapas. I have been in Spain and have been to some of these little restaurants where you go in and go to a glass counter, and they may have 15 or 20 or 30 different assortments of little samples of food that you can buy. And the main point here is that they are eating a lot of variety, which really adds to the nutritional benefit of their eating plan. Many of these people do consume alcohol moderately, mostly, but not exclusively, wine. Let me comment here that despite, alcohol kills brain cells. And despite that, these folks tend to fare very well in terms of not getting dementia. There is a lot of communal eating where people eat together as families or in small groups and enjoy the social aspect of eating. They tend to eat to be satisfied rather than to be full. And in Okinawa, they have a saying, Hari Hachi Bu, which means eat until you are 80% full. They engage in fasting and other food rituals at times. They consume foods that are locally grown, fresh, and in season. They have some very interesting food cultivation techniques like terraces of graduated heights where they grow a whole variety of foods. Many recipes are passed down through the ages, through the generations. They consume sugar that comes from whole foods, such as honey and fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and tend not to consume high fructose corn syrup and white sugar and all of that. Many of these people groups fast, that is, they abstain from food for a period of time when they feel poorly. And we know that today that it is certainly proven out that fasting can be a great way to detox the body and to regain health. By the way, Dr. Joel Furman is one of the foremost leaders in the field of nutritional medicine, and he is a strong advocate of fasting. They tend to minimize exposure to toxic substances and to minimize or not use medications very much. They consume fresh food. And I want to mention that these people who are living a long time without disease tend not to be completely vegan, meaning that they don't completely avoid animal foods. But I want to elaborate here that if they have a little bit of meat in their diet, they may have just some pieces of beef, for example, in a soup, or they may have a very small portion of some sort of meat or fish to accompany the meal. It is not the main part of the meal. These people consume more than 75% of their calories from unrefined plant foods. These are not French fries and potato chips and pretzels and all of this. These are unrefined plant foods. Starch appears to be the primary food for the longest lived populations, including a variety of beans and lentils, different rices, squash, different sorts of potatoes, including sweet potatoes, potatoes and yams, corn, whole grains, and the like. It's interesting to note, and I think very important to note, that the Asians, the Chinese and Japanese and so on, they consume a lot of white rice and they eat it 3 or 4 times a day and appear not to have ill effects, and they are not overweight. These are slim and trim people. And I mention this because we are being told in our country to avoid white rice, that it is not good for you. So I think that there's a debate here, and the Asians have very successfully consumed this as their primary starch. Very little, if any, processed or refined foods, sugar, corn syrup, preservatives, artificial flavors, artificial colors, and so on, and other chemicals. So they tend to avoid these things in their diet, and I think they are much better off for avoiding the refined foods where we see all of these food additives. These people, on the whole, tend to assure that they get adequate rest and sleep and will oftentimes take a nap during the day. Uh, they tend to maintain very strong ties with their friends and their community and their family. They exercise regularly, many of them by in farming work or just in walking every day, and tend to not have a high body mass index. They tend to be slim and trim. They involve themselves in daily activities that relieve stress. This may be exercise, or it may be just social activities with other people. They are involved in faith-based activities, and many remain sexually vital till the age of 90 or even 100. When we move these long living people groups to the Western world, the United States, or other areas where they eat like I do, most of them get quite sick, So the point that we want to make here is that these chronic diseases are not primarily or solely genetic, that we can determine whether our bad genes or our damaged DNA gets expressed in disease. We can have control over that by our lifestyle, by our exercise level, by what we eat, and so on. So we know that more fruits and vegetables and a reduction in animal products leads to living a longer life. Many of these indigenous groups we're aware of in Japan and China and many other areas, for example, the Tarahumara Indians in northern Mexico, uh, who have now adopted the Western diet, are becoming very ill in all of the diseases that we have. We invite you and urge you to stay involved with the Wellness Warriors Ministry. Our website is mywellnesswarriors.com. Our email address is wazoller@gmail.com. And on Facebook, William.Zoller. We urge you to stay in touch with us. Thank you for joining us today. Eat plant strong and live long.